Hey everyone, welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive Show with me, Reed Dailey. If you are new around here, the Digital Deep Dive Show aims to showcase incredible technology and the exceptional people building it, using it, and the impact it has on the middle market to the enterprise. But before we jump in the show, I want to remind you we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. If you like reading, you can check out the newsletter on LinkedIn. And if you're social, you can check out the show at Digital 3D on X and IG. You can find me, Reed Dailey, on LinkedIn, X, and Instagram at Reed Dailey. With all that out of the way, let's jump into global news and headlines. So the first story that I really caught my attention was the fact that Microsoft commits to Google's The first story that caught my attention was Microsoft's commits to Google's interoperability protocol of AI agents. Took me like 10 times to say that. In a notable development promoting openness in the AI space, Microsoft has announced its support for an interoperability protocol championed by Google. This interactive aim to allow different AI agent systems can communicate and work together more seamlessly. So, this collaboration between two major tech players could lead to more unified and flexible AI ecosystems by enabling different AI agents to interact. It could unlock new levels of automation and integrations across various applications, platforms, benefiting both the tech and the consumer. So, last week, I was supposed to meet with the Google team and understand their new AI agents. When I looked at the press release and the video, it really felt a lot like what I thought Salesforce was bringing to the market, and the fact that Google and Salesforce partner together often. I was very interested to see that solution or the capabilities. Unfortunately, that meeting got rescheduled, so hoping to get that back on the books. But it's super interesting to see, and it makes total sense that Google, or sorry, I shouldn't say that Google is the lead here, but that there is going to be some sort of protocol that these different AI agents can communicate. And really, I'm hoping what this means is you're going to see these sort of different applications being able to do, I will call it if-then statements on steroids. And, we'll finally get the benefits that we all had hoped from RPA a few years back. Next up is much more on the consumer lens, but I do think there will be downstream implications. Apple is developing custom chips for their smart glasses and more. So if you remember two things, Apple's been developing and has been releasing their own silicon called Apple Silicon for a number of years now. I think they're up to, for sure, the but maybe the M5 in their laptops, and they're talking about making something for their wearables. It's been long rumored that Apple is going to be doing a visual sort of augmented reality, not virtual reality, but augmented reality. So, my hope or my guess is that we're going to hear that, all the work that Apple did on the VR glasses has practical implications to AR. And that's been long the rumor that Tim Cook has been much more interested in AR, not VR. So the idea is that you would have sort of glasses and you'd be walking and sort of it would say go left, go right. You're talking to Bob. Here's Bob's background. There'd be music playing. You would take calls. Use cases go on and on and on. One would assume that as Apple starts to look like much more of a mature company and is starting to look to the street, less like an innovation hub, that they're going to want to get back to doing just that, is innovating. And since they canceled their Project Titan, which was their car, their VR goggles are a bust for all intents purposes. This seems like a logical next product SKU or line, I should say, beyond just like the, updates to their Macs, their iPads, their iPhones, et cetera, et cetera. So when I say downstream implications, it'll be really interesting that once Apple, Samsung, Meta, etc., continue to dive into this space of wearables? Do we see the iPhone or sort of cellular or mobile devices go away and that's much more of a visual sort of glasses, or do we see them working kind of more collaboratively, kind of like a phone and AirPods today? Only time will tell. My guess is we'll continue to see more app ecosystems building apps or app extensions, sort of like the iPhone and the Apple Watch, where there's sort of smaller things that you can do on the Apple Watch that connect to an app down the road. Next up, we're going to talk about a little more on the corporate enterprise side. So ServiceNow and NVIDIA partnered to develop enterprise-grade AI model agents. So if you think about what we talked about in the first story of Google doing a protocol with Microsoft, you've got NVIDIA and ServiceNow coming together to do their own sort of collaboration. If you're less familiar with ServiceNow, if you think about CRM coming at it from a customer relationship and standpoint, ServiceNow went the opposite way. They started customer service and they've since branched out and they are growing like crazy. The partnership, my guess, is going to bring advanced AI capabilities, leveraging NVIDIA's accelerated computing and generative AI models, but they're going to direct it into ServiceNow's widely used enterprise platform. So you'll start to see, I'm guessing, something similar to what we saw with Agentforce out of Salesforce, where the agents are doing sort of certain tasks. We'll start to see ServiceNow utilizing NVIDIA's models and chipset. One would assume that if you're closer to the chip maker, i.e. NVIDIA, you'll have a better line of sight into how to make the software more efficient to run on those chips. Obviously, that's not a definitive thing. I'm just more of an observation, but it will be great to see how that partnership continues to evolve. Moving from sort of what I'll call a hardware and software and services business over to an AI model in search of services, if you will. So Claude's integrations, or Anthropic, adds AI favorite work tools. So Anthropic, I will call that the Audi to OpenAI's BMW or Mercedes, however you want to think about that. The AI company behind Claude model has announced a new integration with popular work productivity tools. This work aims to make Claude more accessible and useful for everyday professional tasks, allowing users to leverage its AI capabilities within their existing workflow. Are you seeing a theme? Are you listening and hearing a theme in this show and just what's going on in the ecosystem? By integrating with widely used platforms, Anthropic is lowering the barriers to entry for using advanced AI in professional settings. This will allow users to access Claude's features such as text generation, summarization, and analysis directly within the tools they already have, potentially enhancing productivity and creativity. When I hear this, I think we're going to have much more of benchmarking, analysis, and generative on documents within your own firm, documents you're kind of consuming. I think you're going to see light workflow. I didn't read this press release and think workflow and AI agents. I thought about sort of humans in the loop having a better, I don't want to say toolkit, but a better framework and better output results thanks to structure by Anthropic. So of all the AI tools, I spend probably my most time with OpenAI, although I am spending a ton with Google's Gemini Deep Research. I spend very little time with Anthropic, and this sort of press release makes me want to learn a little bit more, and I'm probably going to spend a little more time this weekend tooling around with Anthropic, getting to know that tool. If you're using Anthropic and you're starting to see the AI favorites with their work tool feature come to bear, send me a message. I'm kind of interested to hear a little more about it. Let's close out kind of the news and tech, talking about what's going on over at Google. So Google's annual developer conference, I/O, is just around the corner, and the anticipation is building for what's to come. You can expect, obviously, I think, more on Google's AI models, Gemini, the unveiling of their next iteration of its mobile platform, Android 16, and much more. Google I/O is just a huge event. Obviously, you're going to see their key leaders jump in and kind of give the overviews on what's coming out. But I think the star of the show is likely going to be Google's AI capabilities, everything from what they're doing with their deep research and Gemini to sort of their agent flows and what we're already seeing with those capabilities and like how other companies are bringing those to life or to bear using Google's tech. So I know I'll be tuning in, excited to see what is to come. All right, so let's switch from global news to NetSuite news. So if you remember me mentioning last week on the show, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be highlighting some of the new features coming out from NetSuite's 2025.1 release. So NetSuite does two major releases, one in the spring and one in the fall. And as an individual that has helped with NetSuite implementations and managed services, it helps me to stay kind of current in terms of what NetSuite's bringing to market and sort of talk about that with folks on this show who are either less familiar with NetSuite and want to get familiar or are already on NetSuite and not taking advantage of some of these new features and capabilities. So there were a ton of releases. And like I said last week, we're going to be talking about sort of the general releases and sort of themes throughout the next couple weeks. And this week was much more, I'll call it less functional and more general in terms of the NetSuite updates. And a couple things that I wanted to kind of just dive into that I thought were more interesting in terms of the end user and making the application more enjoyable and more efficient and effective to use. There was definitely some technical updates that, you can check out in the release, but not as interesting for me or you as the listener. So the first is the customer relationship, enhanced views, and new metrics. So the customer 360 view now includes new metrics such as recent activities, product recommendations, sales performance, opportunities and estimates, order and returns, and receivables. I can't speak to the exact modeling behind that, but one would assume that some of the AI that Oracle's been deploying into NetSuite is definitely driving into this. Users can make informed decisions, improve customer relations, and identify potential sales through these new features. It really feels like a recommendation engine of sorts if, I'm trying to distill that. And if you're using, the CRM functionality, it's a great way to do meeting prep, or if you're on the phone with a customer looking at kind of past order history, looking at bundling, looking at, cross-selling, this is a great feature to have. Moving over into inventory management, as you guys all know, I do a ton of work in manufacturing, so inventory management is a big deal for me. The warehouse management has new preferences for pick, task, and replenishment. I know this is like a super detailed thing, but really key on manufacturing and NetSuite. So this new feature, this new preference for pick, task, decomposition, partial pick, reversal, and replenishment process. So the benefit here is these new enhancements improve the efficiency and accuracy of warehouse operations. Pick task decomposition allows for more flexible and precise management for picking tasks, partial picks, reversals, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, you're starting to see NetSuite get a little smarter, get a little better on the deficiencies. Well, deficiencies is not the right way to say that. The less finance-oriented and more operation warehouse features. In a similar sort of vein, the supply chain planning, scope, repository, refresh, and supplier filters. These are just like all new ways that these enhanced planning capabilities, allowing users to refresh planning data and select and filter results based on preferred suppliers. If you think about like why this matters, as we've just gone through the last few months of issues with different suppliers being impacted by tariffs, and some of that might go, but the ability to sort of filter on suppliers, either inabilities to ship, issues with tariffs, alternative markets, being able to have kind of groups of filters and tags will make using inventory management and supplier management much more effective and efficient in the tool. I can also see downstream implications for this in the warehouse management solution, or not the warehouse, data warehouse solution, and the ability to do planning and forecasting with NetSuite with some filters. Next up is talking about the Suite app analytics. So there's two things that I thought were really interesting. The simplified customer field transfers. So it's a this process sort of simplifies the data augmentation process, saving time and reducing complexity. This leads to a more efficient and accurate reporting, allowing users to make better informed decisions based on comprehensive data. I could argue that this is somewhere between a technical and a functional thing. I just starting to get really more into the data, not just in NetSuite, but overall, and how to use it to make better business decisions. And I think anything that NetSuite can do in terms of, adding fields and features to their data solution and data transferring capabilities is super helpful as they continue to grow out the NetSuite analytic warehouse capability. Then last, kind of want to just talk about Redwood features. This is just their newer theme. It expanding features. So the Redwood experience theme has been expanded to more pages, portlets, and features with customizable role colors. It just makes using the app more efficient and effective and customizable. And I think people will enjoy it and benefit from it. Jumping into this week's deep dive, we're going to talk about Johnny Ive. So Johnny Ive, if you're less familiar, was the design chief at Apple for the Steve Jobs era and in some of the early days of Tim Cook. He's done work everything from the look and feel of apps on the UI and UX of your phone to industrial design for laptops, hardware. He now is at his own firm called Love From, where he's doing everything from making books to designing buildings to working with OpenAI's Sam Altman on a rumored new sort of mobile device, if you will. And so, I was excited when I saw the release of this interview. So the last time I saw Johnny Ive interviewed was the Vanity Fair piece done a few years back. And he doesn't do a ton of interviews and he's very thoughtful with his responses. And I thought a couple kind of key takeaways from the interview was just design it, was kind of like the following, right? So the first and foremost, design at Apple was deeply integrated into its culture, fostering empathy and collaboration. Attention to detail and product design, even in areas like packaging, was seen as conveying respect for users. Ive's current work at Love From is guided by the mission to sincerely elevate the species. Designers and technologists must be mindful of the societal impacts and implications of unintended consequences of their creations. That's certainly interesting based on the mobile device and the apps, the downstream apps and addiction costs from those, but that's another story for another day. And I've expressed concerns about the rapid pace of innovation in the tech industry. So I don't want to dive into Johnny himself too much or what the video is. What I've done is I've linked to the video, but I sort of wanted to take an approach of what could lessons learned from the video and past videos of Johnny Ive do to a pro services business. I've long thought about this and really hadn't, written it down or sort of put a framework together. So the first thing that I thought about when I was listening to this video and went back and watched past interviews was culture driven service excellence. So once again, I'm going to kind of apply his learnings to running a pro services business or how someone would operate with excellence, if you will. So an Ive lesson is design or the quality of the product is deeply rooted in the company's culture, emphasizing empathy, collaboration, and shared values. So if I apply that to professional services, the quality of your service delivery and insights is a direct reflection of your firm's internal culture. Fostering a culture that prioritizes client empathy, encourages collaborative problem solving across teams, even silos, and values continuous learning and ethical rigor. This means hiring from a cultural fit, clearly defining shared values and creating an environment where team members feel empowered to do what's best for the client and the quality of work. I think that's truly profound. I think that's extremely important. I also think it's hard, and oftentimes teams lose sight of that because of deadlines, because of the way that contracts are quoted and less outcome oriented, more time based. And so sometimes that gets lost, but I think that's a really interesting way to apply that to pro services. The second thing is cultivating empathy and deep client understanding. So if I take kind of the Ivy lesson here, practices like shared meals and informal settings cultivate empathy and personal relationships among designers, leading to better products. So like, that's one thing that they talked about, how there was no place to hide in an Apple environment. I think his biggest project to date was the Apple campus, which is a ring, and that was done intentionally. So there were more points of physical intersect and collaboration, which, given the fact that, we're coming out of COVID where so many people are Zooming still, it's important, I think, to build relationships. And I think so much of inside our four walls, much less with customers, has turned into a transactional experience. It's important to get in front of people, to be with people. And so if I would apply that lesson to professional services, it's going beyond transactional relationships with clients, investing time and truly understanding their challenges, their businesses, and their goals from their perspective, encouraging your teams to spend time with clients virtually or in person in less formal settings when appropriate, not just during structured meetings, fostering empathy within your firm too, to ensure consultants understand the pressure and perspective of their colleagues in research, operations, etc. This deeper understanding leads to more relevant insights and impactful service delivery. I think it's super spot on, right? If you understand your team's makeup, their point of view, if you understand your customers' needs, prospects' needs, more than just the direct needs that they've articulated, but if you spend time, I think you become a better advisor. And then the last thing that I was trying to think through, which is the attention to details in the service packaging. And I use that in air quotes. Ives' lesson here is attention to detail, even in something like packaging, conveys respect and consideration for the user. When you unpack something from Apple, the packaging is clean, simple. The air gap of lifting the top of a package from Apple for the iPhone, the iPad, the computer was done intentionally. So there was a little bit of air. So it actually made it harder. So it felt more premium. And you can tell the impact Apple has had on society. I mean, every major brand has sort of taken a playbook in terms of their packaging, from t-shirt drops and subscription socks down to, competitors in the space. So if I were to apply that sort of lesson to professional services industry, in the packaging includes every touch point a client has with your firm, initial proposals, communication responsiveness, the clarity and visual presentations of reports and deliverables, the professionalism of presentations, the follow-up process, and even invoicing. Every interaction, no matter how small, is an opportunity to demonstrate care, professionalism, and respect for the client's time and investment. Sloppiness in one area can undermine confidence or core insights and services. I think organizations screw this up all the time. And the most simple way to at least get in the right direction is choose a font, choose a color palette, let's call it 3 to 5 colors, stick with that font and that color palette throughout. And that is a fantastic way to get started. You can obviously go further and further with visuals, imagery, iconography, verbiage, structure and narrative, but just start basic is what I always think. And you go from there. That wraps it up for my deep dive. Let me know what you think about that sort of analysis and other takeaways you might have from the video, or, insights on how to apply what we'll call Apple-ism to pro services. In terms of on the road, so we've got a couple events coming up. The ACG Boston Deal Fest is coming up in June. This is on the 10th and 11th. I'll be attending that. And then we have a private after the close event, or cocktails after the close event, at an unnamed location. So if you're interested for attending that event, DM me and I can give you more details. If you are in Chicago on the road and in town, let me know. DM me, hit me up on LinkedIn, email @ReadDailey. And thanks for tuning in. I really enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of thinking and going back and forth. I spent a lot of time over a Saturday morning kind of prepping for this recording and really getting my talk track right on this one. So let me know if you like this format. A little longer, I realize. Do you like them longer? Do you like them shorter? Interested in hearing. But with that said, Thanks for tuning in, and be on the lookout for our special value creation editions that will be coming out over the coming weeks, and more on that in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.